Are you meditating before you take on these projects?
I meditate every day. Sometimes twice, 3 times a day.
Is it connected to your creativity, or is it something
100%.
separate?
Yeah, they're inextricably linked. Meditation is a practice of connecting to the source energy, right? Reconnecting to the source, because we do it naturally as a baby and a kid, right? You ever see kids just lying on the floor?
Yeah.
Just lying there? Not doing nothing, just lying there.
Right.
They're grounding themselves naturally and connecting to the source, right? So when you're that connected to the source, it's like, people say, like, when they're writing or writing raps or whatever, producer, they get into a flow state. That is like the feeling of the flow state, and the time disappears. All of a sudden you look up, 10 hours will pass on the clock, right? So it's like I always try and stay very close to that feeling, and so I practice every day.
Boys in the borough, boys, always in the motherfucking borough. Know to keep it thorough. See me on the streets, don't be asking for referrals. Hey, there's no running back. We on the road, that's a fact. Came so far, there's no going back. See me in the club, keep it safe, we on the red.
Roger, my guy.
What's up, dog?
Thank you for coming to the crib, man.
Thank you for having me, dog.
So,
I love it.
First of all, we've connected before. I met you once briefly. I don't remember what show it was, but at the time I was working with Chorus Entertainment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Chelsea Johnston brought me on set for something that you guys were working on, and I remember being impressed because it was right before you started. You came out, you were just rapping to yourself, you're coming out of the green room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is this guy? And she's like, oh, you don't know Roger Mooking? And you look different at the time. I had seen you, but you had a fro.
Yeah, okay.
So I didn't recognize you. But the best part of the whole experience for me watching you come out of the green room was that you had just got a cut. So your barber was in there. And I'm like, oh, this guy rolls with his barber to set? I'm like, okay, that's how he's moving.
You gotta keep it fresh, though. You gotta keep it fresh.
So I love that, man. And fast forward to today, I love seeing everything that you've done, man. Like,
thank you, man.
Let me see if I can get this straight.
Yeah.
Restaurateur.
Yeah.
Celebrity chef.
Okay.
Now author, visual artist.
Yeah.
And award-winning musician.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many more things. But I want to get into this with you, man. Like, how do you distribute your time amongst all of the things that you do and that you succeed at?
I think central to that idea is I don't believe in time. Time is like a malleable construct, right?
Right.
So that's a whole other thing we could get into, like, and discuss.
Course.
Like, that's like whole thing, But I'll give you an example.
Right.
You ever sit down and do something that you really love, and then you look up and it's like 10 hours have passed on the clock?
Of course.
And it felt like it was 5 minutes?
Of course.
I live in those 5 minutes / 10 hours. 24/7, 365. So the time thing is a really malleable construct, and I manipulate it at will.
That's amazing, man. I'm even looking, like, even leading up to us sitting down here, you started showing me some of the stuff you're working on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, even just with the stuff that's coming up, you already have so much that you're tackling. So this is one of them right here.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me about this. Curious Sounds, a dialogue in 3 movements. I haven't read the whole thing. I started to take it in. My takeaway from this is that it's a multifaceted project in one, which I love because I haven't seen many people do this. So it's a marriage for you between music, short stories, and artwork. And when I saw that, I was like, this is a really unique approach, not to mention you brought on one of your friends to help you write this, right?
Well, she did all the essays on the front. So, this whole thing really started as an album called Sound Bites. We living in an attention deficit world, but people still love to consume and be surrounded by art because, it's in the human spirit to create and be around creativity. So I wanted to make an album that spoke to the moment of living in chaos in an attention deficit world. So we made a Sound Bites album. No song is longer than 1 minute and 30 seconds. The shortest song is 8 seconds. So that was a really obtuse concept. And when I getting towards the end of that album and listening to it as a journey, I was like, well, this is really obtuse to listen to because you're going into and out of emotions really quickly.
Right.
So I'm like, it needs broader context. And so I started writing these with the same short form factor of 100 words maximum of attention deficit is the idea. So I wrote all these micro stories built around this idea, and those are the stories. So each song, it correlates with a story. And for the last decade, I've been like, in my house, like painting and do photography, and I promised that I'd never release it ever. It's like, because I have a bad habit of every hobby that I have turns into a part of my profession, right?
Right.
So I was like, this one, I'm not gonna do it. But then this album and the stories, and it needed like a visual context. So I'm like, I broke my own promise to myself. So I then started to roll in some of my visual stuff into it. And so that became the sound bites, right? Which turned into this book here, Curious Sounds. And I brought in Fran to write essays about all of the stories and the visual and the album, contextualize it, her life, our life, how we came together, how we came to creativity and all that stuff. And that's the book. But now this is turning into a gallery exhibit that's going to be launching at the Art Gallery of Hamilton in September. Yeah.
Wow. Big undertaking, man. What I found really interesting is even just reading the book, it's the whole project is really based on short attention span.
It really is. That's the whole idea, yeah.
And when you think about the nature of scrolling and where our societies come now with the attention span of social media, we consume things differently now. Yeah. Right? Like everything down to dating, which luckily I'm fortunate
you're good.
enough
You're sorted,
to not have to deal with that, but even everything down to dating is very quick. Yeah. The consumption is different.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to lean into that?
Well, I did both, right? Because it's a physical book and it's an album that you're listening to that's really immersive.
Right.
So I really would love to play with the juxtaposition of a physical thing that's very slow. Painting is very slow. One of the paintings in there might take me 2 years to finish.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because I keep coming back. It's like, So it's like, it's a very slow thing. Writing is a very slow process if you want to do it mindfully and carefully, especially with 100-word form factor. I got to tell a big story or multiple perspectives of a story in very limited word count, right?
Right.
So it's a very slow process. And so it's that marriage of slow living and creating things and that attention deficit. So it's the balance of those things. That's what that is really about.
Yeah. How do you, now that it's out and you've seen it come to life with the artwork and the music and everything, how do you feel about it as a project? Is this something that you're like, I accomplished what I wanted to do with these kind of 3 separate things and bringing them together?
This was kind of like the starting point to be able to showcase what the breadth of the idea is about. Because like I said, now it's being extended into an art gallery exhibit that's running for 6 months. You're gonna be able to look and touch it and feel it and interact with it, experience immersive, listen to the music, everything in an art gallery, an institutional environment, right? So there's that layer to it. We're going to be building retreats around the 3 pillars of the art that's in this thing. So there's extensions in life beyond simply the music, simply the book, simply the visuals, simply the stories, and to create experiences that are really interactive and immersive. So there's a lot of breadth inside the concept, and I'm just going to keep unraveling and exhausting what the breadth of it is as much as possible.
Incredible, man. I like I said, I just started to dive into it, but I'm feeling it. I like the process of it, right?
Yeah, thanks.
I'm a process guy. I like understanding how an artist gets to where they're going, and I think the book already does a good job of even jumping into your psyche. Like right out the top, it talks about potentially like the way you think of stuff and how you dive in, because you might have ADHD or you know what I mean, and it's just like that's an interesting concept to me. That's what matters when I'm looking at an artist or an artistry is like how do they get there?
Yeah,
right?
I really look at it like art is actually is a reference to the documentation of the process. So you look at this on the wall and you look at this as the art, right?
Right.
To me, I'm like, okay, what is the process that happened? The art is the process. This is just the representation of the process, right? So I wanted to give you some insight into the process. Because that's where the craft is.
Of course.
So I'm glad you appreciate that.
Yeah, man. That's the stuff that I love. And that's what I want people to take away from this is the process.
Right? Yeah, it's critical. That's what it is. That's what it's about.
Talk to me about, so I've known you as well as a musician.
Yeah.
Right? You've done music for a long time.
Still, yeah.
You're still doing music. But I'm thinking back to, the young 17, 18-year-old kid when you first started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does
15.
that... 15, right?
Yeah.
MC Mystic,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm thinking back to that kid and the journey from music to food to art. And it's like, bro, that journey is wild. No, like not a lot of people get to dive into different sectors like that, right? And when you think about yourself and your journey, do you feel accomplished? Like, or is there more that you want to continue to do? Why do you jump around so much, and how do you accomplish so much?
Well, it's interesting because you say it's the journey from music to cooking to art, as though one is left behind for the sacrifice of the other.
But
it's
you
not
bring
two.
them all together, right?
It's a whole world. I look at it like Disneyland. You go to Disneyland, what is the experience? There's people in costumes, there's rides, there's people telling you stories, you get to meet Anna, like, right? You have Mickey Mouse shaped pancakes, like, it's an immersive experience in all aspects. So, Walt Disney didn't sacrifice the breadth of the concept because he felt that it had to be a silo, because animation was the fulcrum of it, right? You create a whole playground. So I look at it like, okay, just make a whole playground. Like, we're in the city of Toronto, right? There's buildings, there's urban landscape, there's parks, there's residential, there's people milling about, there's people on bikes and the cars. We don't say, I'm going from walking to the bike, to the car, to the building. It's like, no, you're living your life with all of those things all the time.
Right.
So I just don't look at barriers or walls like that. Like, why do you put a barrier around your own life? You know how expansive you are as a human, man? The capacity that you have? So I'm like, instead of placing a barrier or a wall in front of myself, I'm like, okay, well, the wall doesn't exist, and also time doesn't exist. So I'm just moving through space and moments, right? And so if I feel inspired by, like, purple flowers over here, and if that's the thing that's pulling me, that color might come into the palette. It might formulate a feeling that makes chords. It may be like, oh, but what is that? Lavender. What's the flavor of lavender? Okay, so I bring that into a recipe. Like, inspiration comes from everywhere because everything is everywhere, right?
That's true. That's a good way to put it. I think nowadays people get caught up with, and I was talking to Four Corners about this in our last episode.
Shout out Four Corners, yeah.
But this idea of having to fall into a niche, right? And I think that a niche is a double-edged sword, because you might fall into something and find success in something, but then you don't want to be pigeonholed to that. Like, that's the only thing that you can do, or that's the only passion that you have. So how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure lots of people have probably wanted to put you in a box every time that you succeeded at something. Like, no, Roger, you found it. This is what you got to do now.
The moment they try, I try and break it. I always try and do the next thing to break what your perception is. Because if your perception of me is singular, I no longer have the capacity or the ability or the allowance to be able to do the next thing. Whereas I know within me I have the next things, right? So I just don't prescribe to those rules. I just don't follow it. My niche is love, bro. That's my niche. If it falls under the umbrella of spreading love and building community and creating strong ties between people, that's what my niche is. The mediums and the ways that I execute across those things are numerous.
Right. I think when I think about you too, you're somebody who's obviously a Renaissance man. You do a lot, but you do a lot at a high level. And that's the part that's interesting, because a lot of people could do a lot of things, but you do a little shitty job here, it's not so good here.
Right.
But you tend to do things at a high level. And that's the part that's interesting, because there's only 24 hours in the day.
Well, again, you don't believe in. I don't believe in that.
You don't believe in that?
I don't believe in it.
So, but physically, like...
I don't see, don't believe it.
Siri's like, yo, I don't believe in this. This is crazy.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's only a certain amount of time within one sunset to sundown, right?
That's a different thing. Sunset to sundown is not.
I'm putting it in a way
hours.
where I know that you'll agree with me, because it's you know what I'm saying? It's a fixed time limit every day, right?
Yeah.
So within that fixed time limit of sun up, sundown that happens reoccurring.
Yeah.
You could only do so much within that time span, right? And you have multiple things brewing at the same time.
So I'm not an island, you know. I have a community of people, man.
Of course.
I have managers and this team of people. I have an amazing wife and kids who are very supportive and help all these things happen. I have partners and everything. Like, I'm not at the restaurant right now cooking fried chicken, you know.
Of course.
There's people doing things. But I think what's critical about expansiveness, if you're operating truly from a place of love, love is an expansive force, right? So people are attracted to that and they want to become a part of that because it's earnestly coming from that place. So it's easy to add on layers and operating a high level when you're attracting people who operate in those silos at a high level.
Right.
Because then they take it on as their own. And when they take it on as their own, all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're doing sound bites. Okay, cool. I'm happy that you doing sound bites because yeah, you are doing sound bites. I may have started spark the fire, but you know, you need combustibles, you need oxygen, you need a little bit of carbon dioxide in there to manage it, you need somebody fanning it,
right.
All those things to make an inferno, right? So operating at a high level is, yeah, I have very high standards. By the time I say, yo, this artwork is finished, this album is finished, these stories are finished, I'm right now ready to share it with the people around or talk to people about it who, when I share it, I'm confident that they'll grasp it and then they take ownership of it. And then it grows and it starts to blossom onto its own thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to drive that force as the I don't even say as the creator. I'm like the conduit for this stuff, like, you know.
Right.
But it's just passing through, and it passes through to other people, and then they catch it. So, operating at a high level is just attracting, being a magnet for other people operating at a high level within each silo.
So my takeaway, and I hope the people who are watching this, the takeaway that I'm getting is, you surround yourself with the right people and you're able to be a visionary in the sense where the idea strikes you, but you don't feel like you have to see that idea through alone, like every time. You're able to pass that on to other people to help you realize that concept. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't own an art gallery, but there's people out here who own art galleries.
Right.
So if you inspire them enough to be like, yo, I love this concept that you're doing. I love this, so immersive, and you explain it and how it can play out inside of their gallery space. They're like, I've never seen something like that in our space. Let's make that happen. Right? And then all of a sudden you're on all these Zoom calls.
That's how it happens.
And then you're like planning out where the artwork's gonna go, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it all starts just from a really pure place. Like, none of this stuff I actually ever really planned to release, except the music, right? The visual art was never ever gonna come out of my closet, and the stories I only made because I felt the album needed a little bit more context, so I wrote the stories, you know.
Right.
But that was never the seed of the idea coming out the gate. It started to unravel, and I think you just have to be open to what unravels before you and adapt. You know, adaptation is the key.
It makes sense, because what you're describing too is it seems like a lot of, like you said, love and bringing people ideas together.
That's all I care
Right.
about, brother.
I love, and it obviously that's a perfect segue into your show. Your show now, Breaking Bread, which is, I'm really excited about. I got to see episode 1.
Yeah, it's good,
I'm
right?
I'm gonna let you talk about it because I don't want to spoil it. But that show, to me, when I saw it, I'm like, it makes sense. Again, it's a fusion of all the things that you love, right? It's bringing people together. There's food. It's your home. It's an environment, and you're bringing people in to have dialogue and share. I'm like, that makes sense for you. So tell me about the show. It's called Breaking Bread.
Yeah, it's called Breaking Bread with Roger Mooking. And okay, so the whole thing with that is I spend a lot of time inside of food media, food TV, creating food stuff, right? And food media that people consume visually or
Right.
otherwise. I also consume a lot of podcasts. Like, I love listening to podcasts.
Same.
Really, I learn a lot, and I read stuff and consume all this stuff, because to do all this output, you need a lot of input, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was like, how do you create something, thinking to myself, that disrupts the podcast format and disrupts the traditional cooking show format, that I really feel passionate about and that connects people, right? So we're using food as a vessel. In this first episode, we were with Cardinal Official, and we're reaching into what his childhood food memory. For me, my childhood food memory that stands with me is I'm about 4 years old, standing on a chair. My dad is showing me how to wrap wontons. There's a pile of wontons here, a little bowl of water here, a bowl with some meat here, some chopsticks. He's showing me how to fold them. He's over my shoulder. I can draw a picture of the room. I know where the microwave is, where the picture on the wall is. I could smell the environment. I could draw a picture of the floor. Everybody has a moment like that that's central to food, that is a positive food trigger. So we're using that positive food trigger as a gateway to not only cook together, because me and Cardi, we cook, and all our guests will be cooking together that dish that is fundamental to them in their traditional way and my way, kind of coming together, right? But we're cooking together. There's just something very physiologically significant about cooking food together with people. It's a very powerful thing, right? And it's their favorite thing, right? So my only goal is not to fuck it up. It's like you gotta taste at least close to how their granny used to do it. Like, you know what I mean? So that is really significant. And then we sit down and we share that meal. The platter comes in between us and we share each other and we talk. So we're disrupting the traditional cooking format and the traditional podcast format, but really diving into the spirit of that person. And the walls come down because they're doing and eating something that they love. They're cooking that thing at their own skill level with my skill level, which is usually above their skill level, right? Given the guests. And then we're sitting down at the table to share that thing. All those things come together. The walls come down, my brother, and we just talk.
Super candid.
It's just talking. Instantly, I'm connected to your whole family.
Right,
Instantly.
right.
Instantly.
Through food, yeah.
Food is the great connector, my brother.
Wow.
And we're with creative people, so I could talk to Cardi about compressors in the studio and what the mic placement and like writing a song, or I could talk to, a writer about writing and crafting this novel that they spent years on. I can talk to a painter, a visual artist about their medium and how they come to their thing. I could talk to business people and entrepreneurs about how to do their thing, because I also do that.
Right.
So it's just a great sandbox for me to play in and fulfill my mission, man. It's love. It's just love, connect people, dog.
Cardinal for me was a great first guest. I have a
Why
strong.
is that?
I'm a huge hip hop head, and I love Canadian hip hop. I've talked to Cardi so many times as well, right?
Of course, yeah.
But I just love seeing your interaction, and like you said, it just felt candid. It felt like two homies cooking.
We just cooking.
Talking, chopping it up.
And I known Cardi for like 30 years around Toronto.
Of course.
I never sat down and talked to Cardi in my life more than 2 minutes.
Right.
Up until that day.
That's a beautiful thing.
Like, think
man.
how crazy
That's
that is,
beautiful,
right?
Yeah.
Like, we kind of know each other in passing. We don't know each other really. Like, what my respect for each other, what we have done over the years, right?
Right, of course.
But in that moment, and at the end, we say, it's like, he said, bro, I've seen you for so many years and we never chopped it up. And here we are chopping it up.
Right.
It's amazing.
That's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's beautiful. Who are some other guests that we can expect? Can you share?
No, I can't say.
You can't say. Okay. Can you tell me this then? Who's a guest that you don't have yet? That is a dream guest that you would want to have on and break bread with and chop it up with?
There's a few people. I would love to get LeVar Burton.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an amazing human being, man. I know him. The first time we came in contact, I noticed he'd commented on something on Twitter, and I was like, yo, LeVar Burton knows I exist? Like,
right.
this kind of thing? And he's like, yo, me and my family love you, man. We watch your shit all the time. So I was like, he's like, call me. So I called him. Yo, I pick up the phone. He goes, yo, it's Kunta. My brother, I almost started crying. I was like,
right.
Holy shit. He's the only one who could say he's Kunta. Like he drew it out. The ancestors came out, right?
Right.
I think about it now, I just get chills, bro. And I want people to recognize like what an amazing human that guy is. And I've had some amazing conversations with this dude, man. Like, it's just really mind blowing. I really want people to see that. I'd love to interview Sway. Sway would be dope. You know, interview the interviewer.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's probably got some amazing stories. But then again, so do you. You now that you're also stepping into this interview platform as well, do you feel like, because I know indirectly you've interviewed people your whole career as well, through food, right? Through,
In some ways, yeah, there's a communication for sure.
but it's kind of an interview because you're asking them about food and how they cook, and you know, so it's kind of an interview.
In some ways, yeah, a very colloquial kind of approach to it, but yeah, for sure.
How do you feel like, in terms of now being on the other end, I would say, right? You've been a host, but maybe not an interviewer as you've described. Now being an interviewer, how do you feel about it? It's more of like a journalistic approach now.
I love it, man. I really take it very seriously. Because you got to think, over 3 decades, I've been interviewed a lot of times.
Yeah.
And of those thousands of interviews at this point, I remember 4. Like, really a solid 4.
Right.
And when I think of those people, they did their research. They were pulling stuff about me from back in Edmonton that was buried in a press article that they uncovered because they went to the library and searched it.
Right.
Like, physically, like, went into the card catalog and the microfiche, like, right? And I'm like, I gotta respect that. And the ones that I remember are the ones that did that kind of level of research. You know, I love this podcast by this woman named Debbie Millman. It's called Design Matters. And she's been doing this for like 20 years or something. She's basically invented podcasting with Joe Rogan. Like, right? And she asks questions. Every episode, people say, wow, you really did your research. Because they're like, so your mother used to call you this nickname at 3 years old. What the hell?
It's like Nardwar.
What just happened? But you respect that. So I take the medium very seriously, and I want people to walk away saying, yo, I had a great conversation with that dude, and we talked about stuff I never talked about before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to do gotcha. I'm not like, gotcha, and blast them up on social. Like, I'm not about that, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel you.
I just want to get an insight into the people.
I think that's the most beautiful part of having a conversation, is getting to know someone on a more candid, intimate level that maybe you wouldn't have known through just watching, like you said, a more colloquial interview. Yeah. TV interviews, more daytime
6
television.
minutes.
Those are great. They're fun. They're meant to be entertaining. They're almost the equivalent to like what a social media interview is now. It's like you put up a quick little fun clip on the street.
Boom. Yeah.
They're fun.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a in-depth conversation, I love stuff like this. I love what you're doing. I grew up watching George Stroumboulopoulos. I used to.
OG. Shout out
OG.
George, man. He's amazing. He's one of the best.
These are panels from George Stroumboulopoulos' show.
Oh,
I used to
for
direct and produce his show.
Oh,
right?
man. Respect, dog.
Yeah.
George is one of the best.
So House of Strombo is this is where I got the idea from, to do it out of my crib. I'm like, I directed and produced that show that he did out of his crib.
Yeah.
I'm like, I might as well take that same approach here. But just watching him do it for so long,
He's good.
for years, he really dives in and has a conversation. Right. What do you hope to uncover when you talk to somebody like that? Like, is it more of like a therapy kind of session where you hope to have some kind of healing, or is it more just like, I just want to learn?
I have no expectation about what I hope. I just want to create an environment where everybody feels safe. They know that our mission is to spread the message of connecting people. And that's the framework. Everything else, and I'm going to do the research, so if whatever comes up, we can spit on that. But I'm not looking to guide anything in any. I'm just, one of the most amazing people I met in my life is a woman named Patricia Erb. She used to be the old president and CEO of Save the Children. I'm an ambassador of Save the Children over a decade now.
Right.
She was the last president and CEO. I went on a trip to Peru with her. We did some amazing things there, right? On the last day of the trip, she's an incredible woman. Her life story is treacherous, tragic, and beautiful all at the same time.
Right.
Really incredible human. The last day of the trip, I went and had lunch with her, just me and her, and I said, you are really a special person. And I said, what is the most important thing that you do? She says, I make space. I make space for people to feel comfortable and to blossom and do what they do best. I think of that almost every single day. So my goal is to make space to let these people just be themselves, feel comfortable, and we're gonna cook and eat some of your favorite shit, and then we're just gonna talk. I'm not trying to get ya. I'm not trying to blast ya. I'm not trying to create a beef. I don't care about none of this shit. Like,
Right.
This is stupid, man. It's silly, man.
I agree. I agree. Conversation at its core is really about uncovering that person's opinions and their thoughts, right? But
It's one of the most human things you can do.
But like you said, nowadays it's all about the views and the likes and how do you get this, right? Like, how do you attain these metrics? That's something that I think a lot of creatives in today's society deal with. And I want to ask you about that as well, right? You're used to coming from broadcasts where there's like, you know, these are the ratings on this show. This is what this is, right? And your approach to music, I'm assuming you look at that as well. Like you're a Juno award-winning artist, right? And that comes from an accolade. But now it's part of your title. People present you now as he's an award-winning musician.
Yeah.
So in a sense, does that matter to you? Do these accolades matter to you? These metrics matter to you?
I got lots of awards for different things.
Yeah.
They're buried in in a box in the bottom of a bunch of other boxes somewhere in my basement. I went looking for the box the other day. I couldn't find where the box was. Right? In that box is like a Juno and like there's like tons
Cookbook awards. You have there's all
there's
kinds
design
of awards.
awards. There's a lot of things.
Right.
Like there's a lot of stuff in that box. One day I gotta unearth it, like for something. You know, Chaos says you gotta remind people sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So shout out to Kev. I don't care. That's not why I do any of this. You know, that stuff comes. Those are like frivolous things. I appreciate, respect all of those things for sure. But when I look at the things that have actually hit or taken off in my life, there was never a consideration about money. It was just purely, I want to write this song. It feels like I'm in a car riding, boom. I sat on my aunt's couch 4 a.m. and that song turned into Funkmobile. Like, right? I just wanted to create the feeling of being in the car, like, climb right in and melt in my leopard skins. Like,
Right.
Right?
That's a classic track.
Take you into
Yeah.
I wrote that on my aunt's couch, right?
Wow.
So it's like 4 a.m. coming from the Rivoli, like, right? So it's like, my only thought was to immerse the listener in that feeling. And so this has taken off. Look, I wrote an album, this turned into a book, now it's an art gallery, there's gonna be retreats, like,
Right.
But I needed to just I never was gonna put this visuals out. I just did it because I love the feeling of paint under the brush moving. That's what it's like playing with dough. It's like a mental health practice. Playing with dough, you have those squishy balls that you take into the office or whatever. Playing with dough is like that. And I realized that the paint moving under a brush was the similar feeling in a different way, but you got a picture at the end, right?
Right.
So I just loved moving stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at this, it made an image. Okay, this one's done, let's start another. I just got obsessed with the feeling on the hand, right? So I just always focus on the feeling. And everything in my life, like Everyday Exotic, the show I first launched with our Food Network, they wanted me to do this, and I'm like, nah, I don't feel that. This is what I feel. This is how I want to do it. I'm not going to say this. I will say that, And I stood by that, and it turned into like this global thing, like 40 countries all of a sudden. It's like 40 countries around the world on this thing. Manfire Food is like that.
Right.
Just standing on that so I realized that anytime that I've had success or won, like, quote unquote, it's just because it came from the most pure place. So I just try and always live I don't look at any metrics. You'll never see me ask or how much sales, how much I actually don't care. Truly. I don't formulate an album thinking, oh, I need to make a hit. I actually don't care. I want to immerse the listener in the experience and the emotion.
Do you recommend that approach for all creatives? Not worry about metrics, don't worry about any of that stuff, just worry solely on the authenticity of creating.
I think if you're truly a creative, if you're truly an artist like that, you do it because you have to do it. For me, if I didn't have a creative outlet, I would be in the ground. There's absolutely no way I would be walking on the ground right now if I didn't have an outlet. So I need to do these things for outlets.
Right.
So it's purely a selfish endeavor out the gate. Purely.
But you've managed to make a good living doing these creative outlets, right? So it's not.
Because I also have a business brain. So I know how I'm fortunate in that I'm left and right brained, right? That I realize is an unusual and fortunate thing. It's also hard because it never stops. Right? So I'm able to, once I create the thing from this very pure place, then I could bring it into a team and I could see ways that we can exploit it, I guess, for the lack of a better term, right? And so I try and find other people who have a similar vision. Yo, I met this person at the art gallery. I got the vibe from them. Let me share this idea with them, see what they think.
Right.
Let me send this album to my manager, see what they think. Let me send it, let me see. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, this is cool. And then we start piecing the puzzle together and I can do the creative side and the logical side of it at the same time. But I always defer when it's like, okay, we got to do A or B. I always lean back to go, what is the essence? I never think what's going to make the most sense. What is the essence? Respect the essence and carry through with that. I think that if you look at any great body of anything created, I think it stands on that. So do I suggest that for everybody? Everybody has a different way. But if you're really an artist, you're going to be doing this like De La says, I'm doing this with or without a record deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so I've been doing it with or without record deals, on and off, for decades, because I have to.
You referenced Funkmobile earlier in some of your shows that are like some of your highs in your career. And I look at that and I think for a lot of artists, they get tripped up when they reach a high and then they try to continue to chase that high.
I'm always trying to break that one. Whatever just hit, I'm trying to break it.
I think you've done a good job, man. You've consistently outdone yourself throughout your career. And the cool thing is it's not just like I hit this high in music. I've only continued to grow in music, but you've transitioned into so many other things and hit highs in a bunch of lanes. That's what's really interesting about you.
I think why is because I'm always willing to break it. Like I look at great artists like, let's say Madonna, let's say David Bowie. Every album, they broke the last image, right? You look at Madonna's album to album, she's always breaking the material girl to become the next person. David Bowie, always breaking the last person to become the next person, right? So I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not trying to be mediocre with shit. I want to be great with shit.
So for you, you're thinking about reinvention consistently and constantly all the time.
I'm not thinking of reinvention.
No?
I'm just following the path.
And what is that path?
I don't know. I just do what's the feeling. I just started moving paint under the brush because I like the feeling of it. I didn't know that I was going to end up making a book at an art gallery. And I had no idea. I had no intention to ever come out the closet.
The painting is really interesting because that's, I think, the newest thing that people are going to get used to seeing you do is paint. They've seen you do music, food, hosting, a bunch of stuff. But painting is the new one, right? When did you first pick up, how long have you been doing this now? I know a couple of years.
Over a decade.
Okay.
Yeah. Over a decade.
And it's just been on the low the whole time. A lot of people haven't really known until...
Only my wife and kid knew I was doing it. I had cousins come to my house millions of times. They never, it's locked in the closet. They didn't even know, they never even saw a paintbrush out. No white, my family, my parents, my brother, sister, nobody knew. My sister's an artist.
Wow. So was it therapeutic for you or you just did it just because it was there and you wanted to try something new?
So what happened was we had a son that died, right? And then we had a daughter that died a few years later. And I didn't know what to do. It's like, I can't explain to you how traumatic it is. And I never knew anything could hurt so much.
Right.
Right? And I didn't know what to do. None of my tools worked. You know, I knew how to write songs, poetry. I knew how to do. I know how to do meditation. I trained with a monk for 5 years. Like Tai Chi. I tried everything. I had nothing worked. It just was so crushing. So I went to an art store. I don't know why. Again, this is just like the path unraveled. I went to an art store. I bought some canvases and some paints, and I just started moving shit around. It just felt good. And so that became a painting that lives above the fireplace in my house now, to this day.
Did that first initial painting?
Yeah, the very first initial painting, right? Lives in our house. And then I just kind of continued because I liked the feeling, and it brought me all of my other tools I had exhausted, and this one helped a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to continue to do that because clearly it's powerful.
Right.
So I just kept doing it, and I just kept doing it, and then pandemic hit as well, and I just had a lot of time to be just doing it, and all of a sudden the closet's full, man. Right? But it really, again, it just came from a place that I didn't even know. I never imagined. Like, I just never imagined. I don't know what compelled me to go to the art store that day. I could have went walk in the park. I don't know. Something just sent me to go get this, go get this, go get this, go do this. And here, look at all this.
Wow. It's do you look at this now today, like your journey in painting? Do you attribute it to your daughter and son that passed away, in a sense of like this is also a homage to them now as well, because it came from this moment of grief? Or do you look at it as something separate?
My whole life is a homage to my whole family like that, you know. There's ancestors, there's grandparents, there's my sons and daughters that are here and passed. There's, I feel a responsibility to the lineage. Because like I'm coming from a lineage of creative people and food and beverage people. Right. Like generationally. Right. Right? So I feel like I'm adding on to the path that they've laid. Like I'm walking the Mooking pathway. Like whatever that thing is, I'm living in the lane, and I'm trying to live as fully in that lane as possible, and expand it a little bit,
It's a beautiful thing when you start thinking about the family lineage, and I've heard you speak on your grandfather coming to Trinidad, and they bastardized the name, and I've heard you tell that story, and I found it interesting because for lots of Canadians, that's a common story. It's a common story to come from a different place. Somewhere along the lines, the name is a bit messed up, but you still respect and love that family lineage. There's something about being tied to Canada as an immigrant, but knowing you have a lineage that's somewhere else, right? Yeah,
because like we're living in this physical space, but this physical space is nothing. Time is nothing. Time is nothing. This physical space is nothing. We are actually spiritual beings of love and light, my brother. That's what we are. We're just manifesting through this little madness, like, right? So if you're operating from that place, thinking from that place, right, then your ancestors aren't there. They're here, right? All those things and spirits around you, they're like, you're all just an orb moving together like this. So I think of it like I'm just one layer of that orb, and we're moving. Everybody's moving together,
You mentioned it, and it's in your book as well, that you trained with a monk for 5 years. I think you said it was every day for 3 hours?
3 to 4 hours every day for 5 years. I don't think I missed a single day.
Wow, that's crazy dedication. And so obviously when I hear you speak like this about energy, does it come from that period, or is this just something you've always felt and training with the monk strengthened it?
Yeah, I think it's something that I always kind of felt intuitively. I used to grow up, my father used to meditate in the basement. And I'd ask him, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm meditating. And he used to do like traveling meditation, basically, where you leave and go and then come back. I'm back on the couch, right? And I'd ask him about it. And so I was aware of all that stuff growing up. And my dad would show me like, read this Taoism. What's this? Read this passage. Like, kind of sprinkle things, but never push nothing, right? So I was kind of always open to and aware of, conscious of it. And then I started training with that monk, and that, like you said, just solidified. I was like, whoa. And you start to feel things in your body while you're standing still, prone in space. And you're like, why am I vibrating right now? Because because I'm standing completely still for the last 45 minutes. Why am I sweating and vibrating, right? And you're like, oh shit, that's energy. And then you start to understand harnessing energy and feeling energy, and then you're like, oh well, we are just orbs moving through space, you know?
Wow, man. I when I think about that and I hear you speak, to me, I've heard people speak about this and it intrigues me. How would you explain or suggest to someone that wants to learn more about meditation, how to get in touch with that side of your spiritual being? What's like an initial thing that someone can do?
There's lots of places, courses, practitioners around the place. Just go visit them and try practice with them and just feel it. If you don't feel that person, go find another person until you feel a connection, and then you're resonating, and then just keep practicing. You practice at home. Yeah.
You talked about your pops practicing travel meditation. Have you tried travel meditation?
No, not specifically like how he used to do that. But I've done a lot of really interesting meditation where I feel weightless. Once you get to the level that I was at that time, and there's levels way beyond that, I remember like I could go deeply instantly. I could say, okay, I'm gonna meditate right now. Within 3 seconds, I feel like my body doesn't exist, like I'm floating and I'm weightless, and there's just a sense of freedom. And it's the most amazing feeling I ever feel or felt in my life. Like, and I got 4 kids, so trust. Like the most amazing feeling. And so I just started to chase that feeling, because it was like, yo, that's what this living is about. Like,
right.
You know, that's what that feeling is. You know, we're so disconnected from it, and you start to catch that, and it's like, okay, all right, so this is all just fuckery. Let me operate from the right place, where the truth is, you know? So that's really what it is.
Are you finding that this also impacts your art when you're creating? Like when you're painting now, or when you're, planning, your new show, your new series, are you meditating before you take on these projects? I
meditate every day. Sometimes twice, 3 times a day.
Is it connected to your creativity, or is it 100%. Something separate?
Yeah, they're inextricably linked. Meditation is a practice of connecting to the source energy, right? Reconnecting to the source, because we do it naturally as a baby and a kid, right? You ever see kids just lying on the floor?
Yeah.
Just lying there? Not doing nothing, just lying there.
Right.
They're grounding themselves naturally and connecting to the source, right? So when you're that connected to the source, it's like, people say, like, when they're writing raps or whatever, producer, they get into a flow state. Mm-hmm. That is like the feeling of the flow state, and the time disappears. All of a sudden you look up, 10 hours will pass on the clock, right? So it's like I always try and stay very close to that feeling, and so I practice every day, multiple times a day. And there's different ways to practice. There's moving meditations, there's still meditations, there's breathing related stuff, there's lots. Very rich world. I think it is the most powerful tool available to humans of all walks of life, all income strata, all social position, and it's 100% free. It's the most powerful human tool that I've come across in my short life. Everybody should know about it.
I started meditating a little bit. I'm not on the level that you're on, but I started a little bit, and I've already seen a difference in the way that stress impacts me. Things that normally would have jolted like a reaction for me, I don't react the same anymore, and I have more control over impulsive reactions.
Yeah. It's a balance. Yeah.
On that note, I've talked to so many people, a lot of creatives, a lot of people who make it, to interesting places in their lives, and I find that the commonality is that they've always had something inside of them that's made them a little bit different. That's something that I'm starting to realize in a lot of people that I speak with.
Okay.
And I look at you and I'm like, okay. Beginning. And that's something that I want to hear your perspective on, because I think as a kid, You were just saying you're a young kid, you throw yourself on the ground, you're grounding yourself. But I even think through adolescence, we're still finding ourselves. We don't know who we are. You develop your personality and things as you grow. But at a young age, you were already invested in music and creativity. And I look back, I looked at the Jungle Man video, and I saw young you in that video. The confidence was there. You were spitting bars, and there was something special there as a kid. When you think about yourself now as an adult, but you look at that kid, do you think to yourself, it makes sense to where I got here now because there was always something in me that was going to bring me here?
That's a really narcissistically reflective question.
Do you look at it as narcissistic? I don't. The way that I look at it is
That's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of deep, penetrating self-reflection.
Yeah, but do you look at it that way? It's like, for instance, if I were to look at someone who's a great athlete today, Michael Jordan. That kid was special when he was young, but because he was putting in the time and practice, and you've heard Michael Jordan speak about stuff like this. He wasn't really tall, but he really was putting in the work to get there. But even if it wasn't skill or a talent, the drive was always there. That drive to want to make it was always there.
Okay, so check it. You know, Jay-Z says, you are who you are before you got here. Right? I think there's a certain amount to that because you are not your body, you are the spirit. And the spirit just doesn't come from nowhere. Energy never dissipates. It's continual, right?
Right.
So, because I inhabit this body now, that spirit has a lineage, right? So, to a certain extent, you are who you are before you got here. I remember my parents used to be, when I was in Trinidad, I was about 4 years old, and we lived across the street from this French man who didn't speak English. My mother said every morning I used to cross the street in my diapers, only wearing diapers, barefoot, and go sit with this French man and talk to him for hours. And she said she would only see our backs because of how the house was positioned, but it would be like back and forth. And she'd try and go talk to the man. The guy does not speak English. And I was 4 years old. I did not speak French. Right? I think back at, like you said, as an adult, looking back now, what is special, I think I always had the ability to connect to people. And so as you take that ability across different mediums, visual art, writing, music, cooking, making television, video, media. The core of it was all of those mediums require me to connect with people. So I think if there is any spark, my gift is I'm able to connect with people. And it's got me here, but who knows where else it'll go.
I see that. I see that through your journey, and even through your musical groups, right? Like your first group, and then you ended up with Bass is Bass. But I always felt like you always were able to pool people together and start something new. And like you said, this is kind of the trajectory of what we've been talking about through this conversation: is you pull people in and start something new, right?
Yeah, because everything is always new. Everything in front of you is always new, right? It's never been done until you sit down and do it, right? But
do you ever think to yourself also like the initial rap group that you started with, you guys could have stayed together. You guys could have.
That was my fault. I take responsibility for that, but you're right, yes.
You could have.
Yeah.
Right? Bass is Bass could have stayed together. I'm not sure what happened there, but
unlikely that would have stayed together much longer. But next, yeah.
But the point is that these things could. It's we as people make the decisions when something ends, when a marriage ends, when a friendship ends, a working partnership ends. It ends. But things could stay. They could last longer. But what I've noticed is you are one of these people where you're always turning over a new leaf, and there's something exciting there. There's something exciting in knowing that it's like, I did this for a moment and this is great. I'm going to carry parts of this with me, but there's more for me to do. There's more for me to explore. I
don't think about it that logically. I just walk and it just unravels, and then it's like, oh, there's this new thing. Like I said, I walked into the paint store. I never painted a thing in my life. I never knew I didn't even know what kind of brush to buy. Like I just grabbed, this looks good. This looks good. I did it just from blind faith. So
Right.
I just operate from blind faith. I mean, it's not very smart. Like it's not planned. It's not methodical. But I'm willing to adapt. And like you said, carry some of the learnings from the previous things into the new things. But like life is evolution, the world is evolution. This tree is a different tree than it was a decade ago,
100%.
right? And the tree is not like, oh, I want to maintain being the tree I was a decade ago. No, it's not even thinking that. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna grow a leaf sprout over here now. You know, 60 leaves over here. It's not like, oh snap, I need to go. You know, like it's just progress. You know.
Do you ever think back? Well, I guess you kind of just did right now. I was gonna ask, do you ever think back and think maybe you ended something prematurely? You mentioned with the Maximum Definitive, you're like, well, that was kind of my fault. Like,
That's my fault. I should have stayed in two groups at the same time, because bass kind of wanted me to morph into that, and then that just took off. And before you knew it, we're like traveling all over the place. I was like, oh shit! I ended up abandoning these other guys. Like I feel so horrible about it still, you know. But it just took off, and it was like trapped in the moment, and it's like, what am I gonna do? And then it's like, but I could have stayed in two groups and just bounced and did different things. And you know, retrospect, I should have done that. It's one of the regrets of my life. But you know, I've talked to those guys about it. We're cool. And
Click is my guy.
I talked to Click.
Yeah,
you know.
Click is my guy too. But
We're re-releasing the Jungle Man.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, look out.
Okay.
On single, we're releasing Jungle Man single and a couple singles from back in the day, just limited run on
I
vinyl.
love that. I'm hyped for that.
Yeah, on vinyl, it's coming. Yeah, it's coming.
That's great, man.
Fall, summer, something like that.
I wanted to ask you, going back to this project real quick, the tracks are really short, a minute and a half.
Max.
Max.
Minute and a half. Yeah.
Minute and a half max, and you, like you said, you have some that are 8 seconds long.
Yeah.
When you think about that, and you think about where the music industry is going, right? You think about streaming platforms, all of that stuff, Spotify, all these things. I know you mentioned metrics to you don't matter, but when you look at consumption, do you think that this is you've created it in a way where it's more palatable for people to consume on these platforms? Like, is that almost the intention as to why you did it? Because I know you're playing with the idea of attention span, and now people are consuming on these platforms. They're consuming on all the streaming services. Did that come into play when you were creating this stuff?
Really what it was how do I make, you know, I realized that there's an attention deficit in the world, and I
Right.
wasn't really thinking about it in terms of the music industry or how the industry operates. I was thinking on a human level. How do people relate to things in an attention deficit environment? And then my next thought was, how do I make, and then I decided 1 minute 30. I don't know why I decided that, but that felt like really short to me. Like, you know what I mean? How do I give a breath of an emotion as expansively in a minute 30, and then take you out of that and then into the next emotion in a minute, and then take you out of that? And so the journey becomes this, and still make it interesting without making it feel like you've been bombarded. So really it was a creative challenge that I placed on myself that drove the whole thing. But it wasn't like, oh, I need to satisfy the low attention span of people. I was just exploring the moment and the environment that we're in as people.
Do you hope that people take it in chunks, or do you hope that they take it in all in one go?
Personally, I like the one go because it's designed in 3 movements. There's the learning, which is the first third. There's the living, which is the middle third, and the leaving, which is the last third. And those 3 movements emulate the significant stages of life. The first movement is from conception to adolescence. The second movement is through adolescence through adulthood. And then the third movement is beyond adulthood into end of the physical body, right? So the Soundbites album is really designed to take you on that journey. And it's only 19 minutes.
Right.
Right? It happens in 19, you live a whole life in 19. Because I really wanted to play this idea, you know, people say when they're dying, or people who come back from dying, they say, I saw my whole life flash before me. I wanted to capture that feeling within however long it took to go in, you know, maximum 1 minute and 30 songs. through conception to the end of the physical, right? And so really it's intended to listen to like this, but now extending the breadth of an idea now, right? Then you get Curious Sounds book. The book is designed that you flip. So you may like a picture and you look at the picture and then you
Right.
read a story that's attached to the picture. You're like, oh, that's cool. And you realize, oh, you know what? Fran referenced something about this picture earlier. Let me go back to that reference. And you find the page where she talks about that visual and then you get trapped in the essays for a little bit. Then you're like, oh, that's cool. The essay just now mentioned something, a lyric on page 200. Let me go check that lyric. The book is designed so that you move and you flip. It's like, I love these kind of coffee table books like you have. You pick it up and you don't read it from back to front.
No, right.
It's not like a novel, right? You pick it up, you're like, oh, I like this. Oh, you like that's cool. And then you just get inspirations, right? The book is designed like that. The album is designed as a movements. The museum experience is going to be even more outlandish, I promise.
I'm hyped for that. When is that? So when is that happening?
Launches to the public September 7th and it runs till February 23rd of next year.
I'm coming out for that, man.
Yes.
I'm hyped for that.
It's really-
And you're gonna have the physical pieces on display that
And
you
they're
created.
interactive, the stories are there, the music is there, there's interesting stuff on the wall to make you think beyond what is obviously
Is the
in front
artwork
of
for
you.
sale or is it more installation based?
Right now it's an installation. I haven't considered sale because I don't know, it's so deeply personal. I find it harder to part with paintings than I do releasing songs.
Interesting.
It's hard. It's hard.
Maybe because you put more time into it. Is that maybe why?
Well, no, this time doesn't exist, but
Right,
we go
right,
back to that, right?
Right.
It's because it's from such a pure place.
Okay.
Also, music doesn't exist in the physical space. You can't touch music. It touches you, but you can't touch it.
No, you can't.
So I have no personal affinity to the physical expression of music because there is none. I can't grasp it. So it's meant to be released in the world just in space, just flying around like you can't see it. So although that is equally as personal, I can't touch it, so I can't grab it. A painting, I could grab it, right? These canvases, I can grab them. And there's just, it's really hard to imagine that somebody else is going to grab them and care for them as much as I do. You know, maybe. And if I find that person, I might sell it, but I don't know.
It's almost like you gotta vet them. You gotta make sure they're gonna love that baby, right? They're gonna love that creation.
You gotta love the create. You
gotta love it.
Or I'm not gonna let it off.
Yeah.
So right now we're displaying it in institutional environments, so people can share it and enjoy it, and hopefully somebody loves it, and maybe they love it enough to buy it, or maybe I love them enough to sell it. Right.
Yeah. Aside from painting, you've also done a lot of installation work, right? Like you've worked with the city of Toronto. and
Yeah,
stuff.
lots.
Tell me about that. I've done some Nuit Blanche stuff as well, and I find that the installation for me is what I love is what you were saying earlier, is bringing people together for an experience. And obviously through this conversation, I've learned that that's a huge thing for you. So the installation component must go like a long way for you, right?
Yeah, man. The most, standing right now, the most powerful thing I've ever done creatively in my life was with the city of Toronto. We did a thing called The Burn. So again, it was just born from just a really dark place, and I was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna do stuff for other people. And so I wanted to create and I'm obsessed with fire. I love fire. Like I love fire. Okay.
Because of cooking as well, or?
Yeah, maybe the cooking came to me because I love fire.
Ah, interesting.
I'm
Right.
not sure. I just walked the path, but I've always had a real affinity to fire. So, and there's a power, you look historically, traditionally throughout generations and civilizations, fire is always central for a variety of reasons, right? So I wanted to create an installation that helped people heal, release their things, and there's a burning component to those things. So we created this concept called The Burn. I woke up with it in my head one night. I explained it to the people at the city that I was dealing with other installations with. They got it immediately. And before you knew, we took over Nathan Phillips Square for 24 hours. We had these thousands of pound steel structures in geometric shapes, all burning infernos inside, like fires inside of each one of them, sitting in pools of water, people coming up and interacting with them and releasing their intentions, and that people bawling, releasing their things. Man, I can't tell you how many people I hugged that night over those 24 hours. Just bawling, releasing these little cedar balls into these vessels of fire. And it was a really incredible moment, man. And it was also a very tumultuous period in my family's life. And this burn came deep in the middle of it, like within days. And so I had to deal with that and then return to the burn and execute the burn. And I ended up needing the burn more than anybody else there, maybe, And it just happened, and then I needed it. Like,
right.
Right? I was the one who needed it. And so that was really special, man. I like to take more burns around the world. Shout out to Umberine and Elder Catherine and Javed, big team that worked on that thing. And it ended up being a really big thing, man.
That's beautiful, man. I love concepts like that. I know, like, even that's the idea behind Burning Man and certain big festivals, right? Is like ridding yourself of certain traumas and certain things through fire, right? So I think that's really
it's
cool.
Powerful, yeah,
it's
man.
very powerful. Based on fire and going back to food really quick, we barely talked about food.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you what you feel your future is with food. What do you feel like you're going to continue to be a celebrity chef and go down that route?
My brother,
and do
man,
more
I
shows?
still got restaurant. I got restaurant at the airport. I'm looking.
Which I'm probably going to hit up tomorrow, man. I'm flying out, so I'm going to hit up your spot.
Oh, yeah, hit it up, man.
Yeah.
So we got that. That's 10 years deep. We're looking to kind of expand the breadth of some of the stuff we're doing in those kind of spaces to make it really great. I work with several companies around consulting and doing stuff around food and beverage, media, messaging, consulting that's ongoing.
In terms of you physically in the kitchen, though,
Yeah.
that's not a necessity. That's more of a recreational thing for you. Like, even with your new show Breaking Bread, I love to see you in the kitchen having fun with people.
I love cooking, man. It's amazing.
But you're not in the kitchen for work anymore, right? Like, you're not actually,
day to day like that.
No.
I still, every recipe that's a twist, I developed, cooked it, and then worked with the chef there to develop it and cook it, test it to scale it up, and then it goes in. But every recipe at Twist started here and here.
I'm hyped to try it tomorrow, man. Yeah. When I go in tomorrow, what do you recommend? What should I get when I'm at your spot?
Oh man, it's some good.
I heard the fried chicken is good.
The fried chicken is crazy, bro. Like, we sell so much fried chicken. It's really good. We do a lot of interesting things with the fried chicken. It's very simply presented, but it's fun, it's interactive, and it's delicious. So we sell a lot of the hummus. Try the hummus, is really, really good.
Let me ask you this, because a lot of people that I talk to, this is a common thing. I'm sure you've heard this before. People think airport food sucks. A lot of people say that. So is it because are there limitations in terms of how you bring food in, or is there limitations working at any airport? I'm sure there's security things, right?
There's a lot of logistical conundrums that are abnormal from a restaurant in the street.
Exactly, that's what I figured, yeah.
And also the scale. So at a restaurant in the street, it's very unlikely that within 10 minutes, you're gonna have 100 people at your door with a ticket. For instance, a flight might cancel, weather.
Right.
And then, the airline gives somebody a $20 voucher to go eat while they reschedule their flight. All of a sudden, 100 people got $20 ticket. And it's like, yo, we got 30 minutes, let's go. That's not happening on the street. So you have to be, not only cater to every possible dietary restriction. Like, if I open a steakhouse, there's a kind of a window of a person who's gonna eat at the steakhouse. There's not gonna be vegans, there's not gonna be vegetarians. It's usually gonna be somebody with an expense account, oftentimes male, right? Oftentimes a professional, right? Oftentimes, right? I'll be very vague about that, right? But often, right? And I can create the menu and market to that customer directly based on those things. At the airport, I'm getting a 2-year-old and a 102-year-old with every dietary restriction, every concern, every kind of taste and palate, and especially in Toronto with how diverse we are here. That person is Filipino, Nigerian, South African, Irish,
Complete mixed bag.
like
Yeah.
everybody. So how do you cater to all of these considerations without having a 200 menu item that you can't execute when 100 people show up at the door? So the conundrum is difficult, and this is why it has the reputation of being less than great. I challenge that. I try, and we've been very effective over the last decade we've been there of producing restaurant quality food at street prices for customers. And we make our shit from scratch, sauces, dips. We soak the fried chicken, batter it to order, fry it to order, like on the street.
Yeah.
Because that's where I come from. Actually, restaurants.
Of course.
You see me do all
course.
this stuff, but I've been cooking in restaurants since 15.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know restaurants, right? And so I respect that because restaurants are hard, man. So I respect that and the legacy of that. And so I try and add on to that in that type of environment.
I mean, your restaurant has a great reputation, especially in the airport, right? So I'm like, a lot of airport food sucks. So I'm really excited to go in tomorrow. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit you up. I'll be like, yo, that fried chicken, I'll let you know what I think.
The fried chicken guarantee is crazy, bro. Trust me, they got it down. They made tens of thousands of that thing. Yeah.
Look, man, we're going to end with a couple fun questions.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, especially being a food guy, in Toronto, not including anything that you're associated with, what is just a good meal or restaurant that you like to go to just for fun, just because you want to try something good?
Any restaurant by Nui Regular, Pie, Keen, those restaurants.
Okay.
She an amazing human being. Her husband, who's a partner, is an amazing human being. Really great people and really dedicated to the craft of cooking and bringing the lineage.
What kind of cuisine is it?
It's Thai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's now become world renowned. People know when they come, right? Tried and true. I really love what Nick Liu does at Dilo. Really cool over here, College Street. Dilo is still one of my favorite joints. And I like Ali's Roti Shop in Parkdale, my brother. You see me posted up at Ali's Roti Shop, eating bus-up shot with my hands and the curry goat.
Well, I was gonna ask you. I know as a Trini guy, what's your top Trini spot? Is that what you would say?
Ali's Roti Shop is there. It's there with it, man. Yeah. If you go out to Scarborough, there's Wicked Carib.
Okay.
Wicked Carib is crazy. They're the people who do the West Indian food in the Scotiabank Arena for the Raptors.
Oh, okay.
So they do that stuff there, but they do wicked food, man. They do wicked food, yeah.
On a music tip, best Canadian MC of all time, not including yourself.
Best Canadian MC of all time, like just on music merit or
That's however you want to look at it.
Oh, you doing some Noriega on me now?
However, whatever the value is.
Whatever's the criteria. Whatever the criteria. Best Canadian MC. I would have to say if you could mash up Maestro Cardinal and King Lou.
Okay.
King Lou because he is he different, bro. Outlandish, and he's brave enough to just be outlandish. Maestro, because Maestro, don't forget, was eating MCs up in Scarborough in the 80s and the 90s. Like they came at him and he eat them up, right? Right?
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted with Maestro. Okay, he earned his stripes, and he has the legacy he has because he was eating MCs, right? And Cardinal because he represents just who he is and what he does, and he's such a gracious ambassador for being unapologetically Caribbean and Canadian, and an ambassador globally. And we can't not disrespect the contribution of what those three as a trifecta to me have really contributed to the industry of music. And
Great.
Chaos, I gotta give shout Chaos.
Great,
man.
great
Chaos.
choices, and Chaos too.
Chaos.
Great choices,
That's
man.
incredible, bro. That's my brother.
Last question I have for you is, I don't know if you're much of a sports guy. I saw you're playing golf these days.
I was at that's one of the people that I work with.
Okay.
I was out there in Kelowna, Predator Ridge, and I went and shot a couple things.
But are you a sports guy? Do you actively play sports or not so much?
Not really. I used to do kung fu. I used to play soccer. I love kickboxing. I trained for a bunch of years kickboxing, and then as I was traveling around filming Man Fire Food, we'd find trainers in every city. So my assistant would be like booking appointments before we shoot every day. Like I got really good at kickboxing, man. I love kickboxing, but my hands started to hurt because I punched and people would be like, "Yo, you punch hard, bro." I'm like, "Well, I'm not here to play, you know. Like, let's go, you know." They're like, "Damn, son, like, you know."
I hear you.
But I really love that. But I'm not huge on sports. Although, the Oilers, I grew up in Edmonton. The Oilers are in the finals this year, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Anybody out there who has a Grant Fuhr shirt, I want it. Please send it.
Shout out Cadence Weapon. He's also bigging up the Edmonton
Cadence,
Oilers as well, man.
Yeah.
But my guy, I want to thank you for coming through. This was a great conversation. This is the kind of stuff I love to do.
Thank you, man.
And
You did a great job, bro.
Thank you, brother. I want to recommend everybody go on and get this. And of course, I'm gonna let you plug it one more time, man. The show.
Yeah, Breaking Bread with Roger Mooking. Look out for it on Amazon. It's dropping. It's June 6th. So by the time this comes out, it's out. So look out for that.
There you go, my guy.
Respect, man.
Thank you, brother.
You so much.
Of course,
man.
I appreciate you,
Yeah,
bro.
respect, though.